Please.
Good morning. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to the W.E.B. Du Bois birthday celebration here at Fisk University. We are going to have our student preacher. Oh, I see Dr. Curry. Thank you. Oh, Dr. Curry, just in the nick of time. So at this time, we're going to invite Dr. Curry to the podium to give us words of invocation.
Let us pray. Eternal God, giver of all good and perfect gifts, the creator and sustainer of life, in whom we live, move, and have our being. We pause this morning to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts to the depths of our souls we still give thanks to you. We give thanks, oh God, for this blessed convocation event. We thank you, oh God, for Fisk University and for all those who paved the way so that we might see this wonderful occasion. We pray, oh God, that your presence might be felt. We thank you for the scholastic legacy that lasts here at Fisk University. We pray for each and every student assembled here today. We ask that you would continue to bless them as they matriculate through our beloved institution. We give thanks for our faculty, indeed those who have invested of themselves so that the aspirations of the students might always be fulfilled. We thank you, O God, for our staff, for our administrators. We ask, O God, that you would continue to empower them so that Fisk University might continue to be a beacon light, not only to this generation, but those yet unborn. We just pause to say thank you for your goodness and for your grace at Fisk University. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and distinguished faculty members, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this year's W.E.B. Du Bois Convocation event. I am Debella Chukokolo, and I serve as Miss Junior for the year 2022 to 2023 school year, as well as a student of the W.E.B. Du Bois Honors Program here at Fisk. As we gather here today, we remember the life and legacy of one of the most influential scholars and activists of the 20th century, W.E.B. Du Bois. His tireless advocacy for racial equality and social justice left a lasting impact on the world, and it's an honor to celebrate his life and work here today. Today's convocation is a special occasion to reflect on the contributions of this great man and his teachings. We are here to celebrate the impact that Du Bois's work has had on our society, this university, other HBCUs in the country, and the world as a whole. On behalf of the organizing committee, I extend a warm welcome to all of you, and I hope you will find this event informative and inspiring. Thank you for joining us today, and let us continue to honor and celebrate the life and work of W.E.B. Du Bois. Thank you.
Good morning again. To the faculty, staff, students, to the Royal Court, to the parents, to our esteemed alumni, I bring you greetings on behalf of our president, Frank Sims. I was given the honor and the pleasure of reading a proclamation to you honoring Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, class of 1888. Whereas over 135 years ago, William Edward Burghardt W.E.B. Du Bois enrolled as a student at Fisk University, and whereas Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois served as the editor of the student literary publication, the Fisk Herald, during his matriculation. And by the way, we are going to bring the Fisk Herald back. I haven't seen one in a couple of years, but we're going to bring that back. Whereas Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois received his bachelor's degree from Fisk University in 1888, and whereas Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois then became the first African-American to receive a PhD from Harvard University, established a Department of Sociology at Atlanta University, and co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, and whereas Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois produced numerous scholarly studies on African American history, politics, sociology, race relation, Pan-Africanist, and American democracy. And whereas Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois established himself as a leader and legacy in human and civil rights for African Americans, primarily through discovery and advancement of knowledge and through research. And whereas Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois established himself as a leader and legacy in, whereas Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois received an honorary degree from Fisk University in 1958 as part of a celebration of his 90th birthday. Whereas Fisk University honors Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois via a residence hall in his name, an honors program in his name, and a statue in his likeness on campus. Whereas Fisk University recognizes February 23rd as the birthday of W.E.B. Du Bois, a scholar and social activist with integrity and intellect who has made substantive contribution to a global society. Now and therefore, it is hereby resolved that Fisk University will always recognize Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois Day annually on February 23rd. Further resolved that the permanent records of Fisk University shall reflect that Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois was a Fisk son forever on the altar. Further resolved that this proclamation be in place in Fisk historical records and that copies shall be given to the descendants of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Signed by President Frank Sims, 2/23/23. Thank you.
Good morning to all assembled here in Nashville, and greetings to those gathered online for this year's Du Bois Day celebration. I'm Dr. Phil Senatore. I teach history and humanities at the College of Biblical Studies, a predominantly African-American school in Houston's culturally rich Mahatma Gandhi district. I'm also the scholar in residence at the W.E.B. Du Bois Center at UMass Amherst. My work as a historian and writer features Dr. Du Bois as one of its centerpieces. I'm honored and humbled this morning to offer the occasion as we commemorate Dr. Du Bois's life and witness on today, February 23rd, 2023, his 155th birthday. My remarks will focus on Dr. Du Bois in history and memory. However, before getting to the topic at hand, I want to salute several folks with whom I've worked for the last 2 years on Fisk's Du Bois Day Committee. Robert Dillingham, Mary Ann Franklin, and Billy Sanders from Fisk's class of 1974 provided the organizational energy to formally celebrate one of the school's most illustrious scholars. In addition, I thank President Sims and Dr. Carr for their support. Similarly, it has been my honor to collaborate with Dr. Jennifer Adebanjo, Skylar Carter, Katara Grissom, Delisa Harris, Deanna Layden, Dr. LaTanya Rogers, Dr. Brandon Owens, and Nate Perry, as we worked to honor a truly singular figure of Fisk's class of 1888. Now I'll offer remarks on Dr. Du Bois in history and memory. By using the phrase Du Bois in history, I am referring to what he had to say about history and the uses of history in the global Black freedom movement. Let me illustrate. In 1946, in his weekly Winds of Time column, as a regular writer for the Chicago Defender, he wrote, quote, "Nothing gives one greater courage than looking forward into the past. That is, carefully examining the present and then comparing it with what actually happened in years gone by. In this article, Du Bois referenced the 1845 publication of Frederick Douglass's autobiography to connect the historical dots between the 19th and 20th century struggles for black freedom. Before analyzing the concept of looking forward into the past, however, let's momentarily review some of what was happening in Du Bois's life around the time he wrote the Defender column in 1946. That year, he was 2 years into what would be a 4-year tenure at the NAACP working on international civil rights. Also in 1946, he began work on the human rights anthology titled An Appeal to the World. The previous spring of April 1945, he spent in San Francisco. While there, he attended the founding meeting of the United Nations and spoke on decolonization in Africa, then underway. During this period, Du Bois completed 2 books on race and global history. In 1945, he published Color and Democracy, a text on the need to abolish the global color line. Shortly thereafter, he released The World and Africa, a meditation on Africa's political future in light of the continent's history. Finally, in late 1945, just before he wrote his Winds of Time column, he attended the 5th Pan-African Congress held in Manchester, England. There, he continued his efforts on black freedom while supporting the next generation of black activist intellectuals planned for a post-colonial world. Recalling this background helps us to understand 2 very important tasks Du Bois was performing in his Defender column. In essence, why history was on his mind. 1, he was analyzing the present conditions circa 1946 of black liberation in the US and abroad at the end of World War II. The second point he was making in his Winds of Time article was how historical knowledge and understanding might function as a guiding light in the unfolding of black freedom's future. In other words, Du Bois was exploring the question of how the study of history could deepen understanding of contemporary times and how historical thinking could be used in the service of equality. This is the point I want to underscore here on the occasion of Du Bois's 155th birthday. His practice of looking forward into the past was both a methodology he employed in studying history, and it was an admonition to his readers and to us. Dr. Du Bois in history thus offers a challenge to each and every person present. How will we use historical knowledge to further black liberation in today's world? How will we collectively forge freedom for the future? Turning from Du Bois in history, I now offer a few comments on Du Bois in memory. By using the phrase Du Bois in memory, I mean how Du Bois has been remembered and commemorated in history. For example, over 50 years ago, in 1968, scholars and students across the world commemorated what would have been Du Bois's 100th birthday. In India, at the Teachers Forum for Democracy and Socialism, Professor G.J. Ramarao praised the legacy of Du Bois's global vision of civil rights. During a speech in Peking, China, Shirley Graham Du Bois raised a Black Power salute to signal her late husband's political legacy of working class solidarity across the color line, including the work of the interracial Du Bois Club's student movement. Meanwhile, back in the US, Martin Luther King emphasized the power of Du Bois's ideas to address world conditions of war and peace in a speech titled Honoring Dr. Du Bois he delivered in February of 1968. Closer to home, educator and intellectual Horace Mann Bond spoke at Spelman College and Atlanta University and here at Fisk on February 23, 1968. He recalled his personal friendship with Dr. Du Bois and his profound devotion to the scholar-activist ideal of putting one's intellectual labor to work in the world. As important as these commemorative events are to understanding Du Bois in memory, in closing, I want to turn to February 1964. About 6 months after Du Bois died in Ghana, on the eve of the March on Washington, a group of his supporters and comrades gathered at Carnegie Hall in New York City to memorialize his life. John Hope Franklin, Fisk class of 1935, keynoted the event. But it is the words of the brilliant Black playwright, author, and activist Lorraine Hansberry that I want to highlight. Around 1952, she met Dr. Du Bois and Shirley Graham Du Bois in upstate New York at Camp Unity, a haven of rest and relaxation for radicals. Several years later, she took a class on African history with Dr. Du Bois at the Jefferson School of Social Science, a Communist Party-affiliated workers' institute in New York City. Thus, she knew Du Bois personally, and she knew his work and writing. He was an institution in our lives, a bulwark of our culture, she said at the 1964 Carnegie Hall meeting. Du Bois's legacy tells us to honor thought and thinking, to keep always as our counsel distinguished scholarship, and hold sacred, strong, and purposeful art, such as beautifully crafted writing and expression. While earlier I said Du Bois's words in history challenge us with questions, Hansberry's reflection on Du Bois in memory leaves us with a strong charge. To honor Dr. Du Bois's thought and thinking, to keep as our counsel his distinguished scholarship, and to hold sacred his strong and purposeful art in writing. After all, this is precisely how we might look forward into the past. Thank you.
Good morning. At this point in the program, we were to have remarks from the Du Bois family. And so we are going to move those to the end of the program for our live stream. And we'll have our students now come forward and share what Du Bois means to them.
Good day, everyone. Distinguished gentlemen and women, esteemed alumni, and my fellow Fiskites. I am Esther Ogundele, an international student from Ogun State, Nigeria, and I am a sophomore here at Fisk University with a major in computer science. I am also a member of the W.E.B. Du Bois Honors Program. And I'm here to talk to you about what Du Bois means to me. Standing here in this sacred ground where Du Bois trod and gained knowledge, I am reminded of his contributions to society. As a Black student at the illustrious Fisk University, I realized the impotence of what he fought for and stood against. As a Du Bois Honors Scholar, I am encouraged to strive for more and propel toward greatness. Because of his outstanding achievements and fight against racial discrimination, doors of opportunity have opened like never before. Matriculating through Fisk, I have learned and I am learning about this great institution's rich background and history. Du Bois, whose statue is to the right of the Calvin Vecten Art Gallery, matriculated through Fisk and went on to make a great impact in the world. I have found a community of great minds and big ambitions here at Fisk University. Du Bois' shoes are too big to feel alone, but together we'll be able to do it quite all right. His legacy will forever live on. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Lakira Floyd. I'm a freshman biology major from Nashville, Tennessee, and I am a member of the W.E.B. Du Bois Honors Program here at Fisk University. Today, as we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, I'm excited to share with you all what he means to me. A scholar, an activist, and an intellectual. W.E.B. Du Bois was a leader who dedicated his life to the advancement of his fellow brethren, not only in the United States, but across the world. His footprints of activism left marks on American history that have significantly changed our outlook on the true meaning of civil rights, Blackness, and racial equity. To know that his legacy was even partially developed at the very institution that we attend is awe-inspiring and further demonstrates the great cultural and historical cultivation of students at Fisk University since its inception. One of the great aspects of our university is that when you learn about its history, its rich history, whether on or off campus, student or visitor, you quickly realize just how highly regarded Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois is, and rightly so. Upon learning of the different perspectives that he brought to social activism throughout his lifetime, I gained a better understanding of both the accomplishments and troubles of Black people in the United States through his written statements and his compositive works titled The Souls of Black Folk. Though more than that, they showed me that having great devotion to a cause can incite change, enlighten, make wise, and that like W.E.B. Du Bois, a graduate of Fisk University, we as students, along with faculty, staff, and alumni, have the ability to evoke that change in the world, the community, in our institution, in ourselves, and that also, like W.E.B. Du Bois, we have the ability to bring our missions to fruition. Thank you.
Good morning. Awesome. Okay. Hello, I'm Sinclair Strong, a biology freshman at Fisk. I come from the San Francisco Bay Area in California, and I'm involved in the W.E.B. Du Bois Honors Program, as well as the Music City Sound Marching Band. As a member of Fisk University's class of 1888, W.E.B. Du Bois honed his skills for only 3 years prior to graduating, enriching Fisk's community as editor of the Herald, Fisk's newspaper. In an 1886 letter, he praises Fisk's students as a great assembly of youth and intelligence, representing a race which 20 years ago was in bondage. 2023 marks 158 years since slavery ended in the state of Tennessee. Originally hailing from Massachusetts, Du Bois had to acknowledge Tennessee's racist past and the danger associated with living in a former slave state. However, he still remembered his time here fondly. Between his time as a student and time as an educator in the countryside, he had various accounts describing his love for the people he met here. As the founder and first editor of NAACP's official magazine, The Crisis, W.E.B. Du Bois promoted Black excellence and shared the accomplishments of Black Americans. Through his writing, he contributed to many fields, including the natural sciences, environmentalism, the social sciences, and African American artistry in the height of the Harlem Renaissance. Du Bois dispelled common biases originating from white supremacist and eugenicist ideologies within the field of evolution through his ability to write. In his book, Dark Water, Voices from Within the Veil, Du Bois advocated for Black involvement in travel, environmentalism, and outdoorsmanship while simultaneously contrasting the white and Black experiences in these affairs. This brought light to the many discrepancies from life in and outside of the metaphorical veil and how it was influenced by factors like Black land, home, and business ownership. Du Bois was a key player in the development of urban sociology as it exists today. Believing that sociology was the study of humans rather than the study of society cemented his reputation as a man of the people, becoming a voice for those often tread upon by society and stripped of their voice. Attending Du Bois's alma mater is a truly unique experience. There are reminders of his legacy that can easily be found around the school. In the library and archives, you can flip through his yearbook, issues of the Herald that he edited, and the commencement program for his graduating class. As a member of the W.E.B. Du Bois Honors Program, I am surrounded by a great assembly of youth and intelligence, to borrow his words. This cohort of students consists of high-achieving students following in Du Bois's steps by pursuing a culturally relevant education and a higher standard of academic performance. Du Bois was a skilled orator, writer, and social scientist. Many of his ideas, though considered radical at the time, still hold relevance in the struggles we face today. I'm honored to attend Fisk University and hope to uphold Du Bois's legacy through scholarship and activism. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Veronica Holmes, and I'm a second-year student from Memphis, Tennessee, and I am an Erastus Milo Cravath Presidential Scholar and W.E.B. Du Bois Honors student studying English and African American Studies. And today, I have the awesome honor of introducing our keynote speaker for this auspicious occasion. Dr. Crystal A. DeGregory, a historian and storyteller whose research interests include Black higher education and college student activism, is a research fellow at Middle Tennessee State University's Center for Historic Preservation in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. She is also the founder and director of Dorian and Beyond, a digital storytelling project of Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas. Hailed Young Sister Leader by Spelman College and Bennett College President Emerita, Dr. Janetta B. Cole, Dr. DeGregory's publishing includes the Forward to Heritage and Honor 150-Year Story of the Fisk Jubilee Singers. Additionally, she has written chapters featured in numerous books, including Their Highest Calling, The Progressive Ethos of Black College Women in Nashville, and Black Colleges in the Diaspora. In addition to op-eds, including how the Black College's Beyonce Honors and Homecoming have played a vital role in American history. Dr. DeGregory's words have also appeared in the New York Times, the Chronicle of Higher Education, USA Today, Time, The Tennessean, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, and Tri-City Defender, just to name a few. A gifted orator and cultural commentator, Dr. DeGregory offers a wide range of expertise on multiple topics, including race, women and girls, history, culture, education, and of course, HBCUs. Known for her collaborative advocacy and entrepreneurial leadership, she is also the founder of the HBCU Story and serves as editor-in-chief of the Journal of HBCU Research and Culture. Dr. DeGregory has presented to audiences at TEDx, South by Southwest EDU, the Southern Festival of Books, the Nashville Public Library, Andrew Jackson's Hermitage, Ford, Nissan North America, and National Institutes of Health, to name a few. She has also given talks and served on panels for Alcorn State, Edward Waters, Fisk, Florida Memorial, Harvard, Howard, Tennessee State, Vanderbilt, and Wilberforce Universities. A finalist for the HBCU Awards Alumna of the Year recognition, Dr. DeGregory was the recipient of the Fisk University Women of Prominence Award and was recognized as the Hope Dealer of the Year by the Hope Scholarship Initiative of Washington, D.C. A proud native of the Bahamas and a Phi Beta Kappa alumna of the historic Fisk University, she also earned Master of Arts and Doctor of Philosophy degrees in history from Vanderbilt University and a Master of Education from Tennessee State University. Among her professional and civic affiliations is trusteeship of the Tennessee Historical Society and membership with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Most recently, she was inducted into the Martin Luther King Jr. Collegium of Scholars at Morehouse College and authored her first book, Magic and Mortal, an introduction to her poetic voice. After the musical selection, please stand and receive Dr. Crystal A. DeGregory. Thank you.
Professor Cooper, you tried to get me. I'm not going to let you. Another round of applause for them, please. I bring you greetings from Daytona Beach, Florida, where one woman with $1.50 and 6 students, including her son Albert in 1904, also made a choice to change the world. That woman, Mary McLeod Bethune, that institution, Bethune-Cookman University, where I have the pleasure of serving as the founding director of the Mary McLeod Bethune Center for the Study of Women and Girls, and as an associate professor of history. I thank you sincerely for this very warm welcome home on this very warm day. A welcome home where since December of 1865, we have come. First in tens, then hundreds, then thousands, and now tens of thousands. I come as they came, Mr. Provost, despite being pelted by rocks and assailed with racist diatribes. They came, working during the day for lessons at night. From age 7 to 70, they came in snow in winter, others barefoot in the sun-scorched summer. They came, as did so many others, at would-be black colleges, where at some time in the more than 1 3/4 centuries that we have been in the business of education, loved us into being. Someone's mother's mothers, and someone's father's father's father, someone whose names we will likely never know, someone by picking 200 pounds of cotton a day, back bent and bloody browed, someone through the hiring of themselves out, someone through the taking in of borders and the laundering of clothes, someone through industry and through innovation, someone through invention and entrepreneurship, by the passing of the proverbial hat and the selling of sweet pies and multi-layered cakes. Someone, though buked and scorned, sought to learn how to read and how to write. By the starlight, moonlight, and the light of candles and oil lamps, someone set for themselves the goal of spelling their name. I came more than 100 years after those first days, in the year 1999, the year that the prophet Juvenile proclaimed that Cash Money Records was taken over for the 99 and 2000s. It was the year that The Sopranos made its debut on HBO, Family Guy on Fox, SpongeBob SquarePants, yes, debuted, children, on Nickelodeon. Beyonce Just Knowles was merely the lead singer of that group. It's you. Young people don't know. It's Destiny's Child. Teenage girls and 20-somethings too wore electric blue eyeshadow, halter tops, and plastic chokers. I hear those are back. Boy bands from Boys to Men and to NSYNC wore all white, while rappers sported bucket hats. I hear those are back too. In sports, it was the year of His Air Highness, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. You know, the GOAT, for those of you LeBron fans. Serena had won her very first Grand Slam title at the US Open. Among the top 100 hot singles of the year, now, come on, some of y'all gotta help me, was TLC's No, I Don't Want No, you gotta sing now. There you go, don't give them the whole thing now. They can't take it, they can't take it. Monica's Angel of Mine. And then you have Whitney Houston, Faith Evans, and Kelly Price, who told us everything we already knew about This Is the Heartbreak Hotel. I'm telling you, if you ain't never been there, don't check in, may not check out. The average price of a gallon of gasoline was $1.22 in the United States. But it was undoubtedly higher in the Bahamas. There on the island of Grand Bahama, in the city of Freeport, in the moderate heat of a Caribbean spring, I was a 16-year-old high school senior. I wanted to attend college, but how I would get there, I literally had no clue. A visit from Anthony Jones, class of 1995, the then admissions director of Fisk University, to my high school seemed promising. He met with the entire 12th grade, about 70 or so of us, and asked about what our college plans were. Now, several of my classmates, when called upon, offered colleges of all kinds. Baylor, our head girl said, or maybe she said Tulane. Someone else answered Florida A&M. Now, not to be left out, I raised my hand to be called upon, and he said, "You, where are you going?" "Nail school," I belted back out to him. Now, I want you to know that doing nails is a noble, challenging profession. Anybody during COVID who didn't know that learned how just very important nail techs were. But I really didn't have any plans to go to nail school. I just wanted to say something. The admissions director, AJ for short, was not about to be undone. He was not about to be outdone. He said, "And what is your name?" "Crystal DeGregory," I answered. He said, "Well, Crystal DeGregory, you're not going to nail school. You're coming to Fisk University." After a series of small miracles, I arrived at Fisk, the only college to which I applied, late after freshman orientation in the September of 1999. AJ had found for me a partial scholarship and promised my mother that Fisk was a place where I would succeed, and that if I did not, He would personally put me on the plane back home at Christmas, and she could keep me. He did not, and she did not. And the rest, they say, is history. It is a history owed in no small measure to my undergraduate history professors, Mrs. Linda T. Wynn, Dr. James Craren, and the late Dr. Revis Lee Mitchell, class of 1969, whom I would be remiss to not especially thank for their small but mighty curation of a generation of history majors and history PhDs who today join the ranks of the honoree and his symbolic successor, preeminent Black historian of the 20th century, Dr. John Hope Franklin, class of 1935. In fact, I see some faculty, staff, and alumni present during my 4 sometimes notorious years as a Fisk student. And I'd like to thank these fine folks, who I will not make to stand, who are the flowers of a Fisk education. What a fine garden they make of what the prophet Khalil Gibran, in his signature book of poetry, The Prophet, describes as love. Love is both a watering and a pruning. It is because of them that I and so many more are. And so I hasten those of you a little younger than us. Don't ever think for a moment that you can grow so tall that you will outgrow the need for strong roots. It is with them and so many more in my cloud of witnesses who I do not want to envision for fear that tears would blind me. Beth Madison House, Leslie Morgan Collins, Marcellus Brooks, Paul Kwame, all beloved Fisk alumni. It is with them in mind that I'd like to speak to you from the text. All the flowers. All the flowers. Let me begin by saying that the inspiration for today's address comes from 2 seemingly disparate places. The first comes from the song by the same name, written by American folk singer and social activist Pete Seeger. Its popular refrain was introduced to me in a convoluted way, kind of like Eddie Levert once sang about that song, Brandy, once the OJs did it. So please forgive me for being a little shy of today's year old when I realized that the Bahamian Swain and Citations, All the Flowers, was actually just a spin of Seeger's original, for which there are countless others, all of which are unsurprisingly similar, but almost none of which are exactly the same. They do, however, share Seeger's first stanza. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? The girls have picked them, everyone. Oh, when will you ever learn? When will you ever learn? Penned as an anti-war song protesting the Vietnam War, Seeger's version of the song follows the life of flowers from being picked by carefree young girls who grew into women fated to place flowers on the graves of their soldier husbands. The flowers, symbolic of life and love, due to the bad choices of powerful, short-sighted men, were literally destined to die in graveyards. Much like his best-known song, We Shall Overcome, the refrain he learned at the Highlander Folk School which was soon after made famous by agents of the modern civil rights movement. Seeger's "Where Have All the Flowers Gone?" captured the spirit of the anti-war struggle. Now, I'm not going to invoke Seeger's phrasing as mere lamentation today. Instead, I'm going to ask you to turn your attention with me to the song's repeated call, "All the Flowers." Still, the specific inspiration for the framing of today's talk comes more concretely from historian Robin D.G. Kelly's masterful December 2022 essay for the Boston Review, titled "Flowers for Farah." Kelly's treatment of Columbia University professor of English and Comparative Literature and African American Studies, Farah Jasmine Griffin, is a treasured treatise of his dear friend's scholarship, mentoring, and activism. To quote from Kelly, Griffin brought a praxis of radical love to an academy that doesn't love us back. It is from this framework, the praxis of radical love, that I hope to contribute something of enduring value to the commemoration of the life of Fisk's greatest son, and unquestionably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, intellectuals produced by this American nation, Dr. William Edward Burghardt Du Bois, now W.E.B. for short. Now, while William and Edward were given names, and Burghardt was a name that he had given to himself while in college, I want to be clear in acknowledging that no one of his time dared call him anything less than Dr. Du Bois. But born February 23rd, 1868 in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, just 3 years after the end of the Civil War and 2 years after the dedication of the Fisk Free Colored School, Willie Du Bois, as he was called with great affection then, was precipitously American by circumstance and decidedly black by his own choosing. Had he been born in another time and place like his father and his father's father, his story would have likely been very different. Now, this gets a little dicey, but little that is praiseworthy is known of Du Bois's Haitian-born, New England-raised father, Alfred Du Bois, whose adolescence historians know very little of. But what we do know is that he was married to as many as 3 women at one time, including Du Bois's mother, Mary Sylvania Burkhardt. Now, Albert's father's father, Alexander Du Bois, he had been born to a white physician, landholder, and slave owner, Dr. James Du Bois of New York. In what now seems like a symbolic or symbiotic twist of fate for today's talk, Alexander, Du Bois's grandfather, was one of at least 4 children born to an enslaved woman on the tiny Bahamian island of Long Key. Any Bahamians in here? We'll clap for that. Go ahead and clap for that. Boasting only 8 square miles long was a generous descriptor for the modest 19th century post in the sponge and salt industries. History, it seems, is faded, as it is so often in the telling of stories. This particular story of Du Bois's paternal past is an odyssey that connects the beloved song of my Bahamian girlhood to Du Bois's Bahamian roots, vis-a-vis his Bahamian-born grandfather and his grandfather's mother, Du Bois's enslaved Bahamian great-grandmother. But a Bahamian boyhood was short-lived for Du Bois's grandfather, Alexander, who was moved to Connecticut, where his white father afforded him a formal classical education unavailable to him on that small island that in the year 2010 laid claim to a large population of 29. So the unexpected death of Alexander's white father, physician, and patron left him, on the one hand, destitute, but on the other, determined to self-identify as black. It was that choice, coincidentally, that doomed the short-lived marriage of the wayward barber, Alfred, and the smitten domestic, Mary, already in her mid-30s, the latter of whose family supposedly disapproved of the match on the basis of Alfred's lineage. But whatever the reason, Alfred was gone by the time Willie was but a toddler. Forced into poverty and having descended into depression, Mary retreated with the less than 2-year-old Willie and her older son, who had been born prior to her marriage and was just 5 years Willie's senior. Retreated with them to the Burgard family's farm in Egerment Plain, where her then newly freed forebears had settled just after the American Revolution. But within a handful of years there, Mary's father, Othello, died of gangrene. Her widowed mother was forced to sell the family homestead. Mary and her 2 sons were left homeless once again. Now, some of you may not know anything about having your back up against a wall, or your lives being a testimony to when it rains, it pours. Ha! But Mary did. Forced to choose between giving up and going on, Mary began again. She packed up her young sons and, along with her mother and possibly a cousin, rented a soot-covered house by the railroad tracks of Great Barrington. And it was there that Mary, about the same age as I am right now, suffered and survived a stroke that left her left arm, leg, or both paralyzed. I know this is not Women's History Month, and I know some of you came here for an esoteric offering of intellectual exercise. But this is a chapel, and as most of us have been black churched, I hope you think it not robbery, Dean Curry, for us to focus in on a mother's love. This mother's love. If you would, you could see middle-aged Mary, having cleaned up white people's homes all her life, survivor of the scorn of an out-of-wedlock pregnancy, a single mother of 2 struggling with 2 small sons, the first of whose father is still unknown to history, and the second whose father was somewhere blowing in the wind. If you could just picture her, fatherless, husbandless, and without a family homestead to which she could return, tethered by paralysis to a small, modest bed in a rented room, looking up into the concerned faces of her softly crying children, you would know why today's talk is about a mother's love. It is a love that made her raise up and out of that bed, though partly crippled for the remainder of her life, day in and day out, to work as much as she could, and likely more than she should. It is a love that made her take in boarders to help pay the rent. It is a love that even with Mary's fierce determination, even with her preteen son working to help support his family, and even with the charitable aid of family and friends, left Mary and her family teetering constantly between the margins of poverty and complete destitution. And yet and still, Du Bois could only marvel as a grown man. Yet I was not hungry or in lack of suitable clothes or made to feel unfortunate. Mother, he said, was a dark, shining bronze with smooth skin and lovely eyes. There was a ripple in her black hair, and she had a heavy, kind face. She gave one the impression of infinite patience, but a curious determination was concealed in her softness. I have come here today to tell you that it was Mary's determination. It was Mary's love that lifted her sons up from what the psalmist David 3,000 years ago dubbed the Mary clay. It was Mary who, only a few years later, was forced to part with her eldest son for fear that he would lose his life as a consequence of a so-called pistol prank at the banks of a great Barrington River gone wrong. And it was Mary, despite everything and everyone, who insisted that her youngest son, Willie, pursued his education with everything they both had. And so, for the life of me, I do not know why history insists on enumerating all of the qualities of Great Barrington and New England, while only begrudgingly mentioning the strength, the determination, and the love of this monumental woman. Yes, Great Barrington, Massachusetts, when compared to the rabid racism of white supremacy in the Deep South, was comparatively racially and educationally progressive. But as Du Bois' biographer, lionized historian, and Fisk University alumnus David Levering Lewis, class of 1956, who was twice winner of the Pulitzer Prize for biography or autobiography for parts 1 and 2 of his biography of W.E.B. Du Bois, pointed out, yes, Great Barrington's black and white populations coexisted civilly, even affectionately, but the two seldom commingled. The fact that the future Du Bois grew up believing that the world was a place where virtually everyone was of the middle class and worked for a living was less endearing, less invaluable than the lifelong lessons of his mother. The first of the importance of Christian values, and the second, that education would be his salvation. If others of my family, of my colored kin, his mother with her signature gentle quietude asserted, had stayed in school instead of quitting early for small jobs, they could have risen to equal whites. As education was the first and critical step in the climbing of the economic and social ladder, nothing seemed to give Mary as much pleasure as seeing her son Willie excel academically. And in his effort to please her, education would redeem his mother and offer the American nation scholarship so prodigious that it still offers as much insightful instruction to freedom fighters as it does prodding provocation to the soured seed and soil of white supremacy that has abounded in this nation and beyond it for 400 years. Maybe Mary knew it, instinctively, like Jochebed when placing Moses in a blanket on the Nile River. Or maybe Mary, like that other Mary, when she laid Jesus more than 2,000 years ago in a Bethlehem manger. Certainly, she got a glimpse of it. On June 27th, 1884, when William Du Bois was one of 7 boys and 6 girls to graduate from Great Barrington High School. The school's first ever black high school graduate to earn a high school diploma, Willie received several standing ovations for his impassioned address commemorating the recently deceased anti-slavery titan, Wendell Phillips. His mother, Du Bois recalled, beamed with pride. It was a look he not only never forgot, it was a look he likely never saw again. Mary's health was increasingly worsening, and the 16-year-old newly minted high school graduate, despite his academic promise and burning desire to attend the then Harvard College, felt pressured to stay home and work to support his ailing mother instead of going right off to college. But like Moses, Mary was not fated to live long enough to see her son reach the promised land of college, when less than a year later, in March 1885, she died of a stroke, leaving teenage Willie a penniless orphan. Even so, the immeasurable impact of Mary's influence on the burgeoning Du Bois's life lies in plain view in the essay, The Damnation of Women. Rightly described by David Levering Lewis as a midlife essay of great emotion and feminist conviction, in it, Dr. Du Bois later reflected on the many sacrifices his mother and others like her made, extolling and maybe lamenting. They existed not for themselves. In a very real sense, the literal place of Du Bois's mother would, fortunately for him, be succeeded by a metaphorical one, Fisk University. Like so many of us, 17-year-old Du Bois, donning his best clothes and packing up all of his best possessions, arrived at Fisk in September of 1885 after a series of small miracles. The first was securing an annual scholarship of $25 from his mother's congregational church and 3 other churches who pledged the same annually. The second miracle, well, that was his rejection from Harvard. See, I don't know about you, Dean Curry, but I serve a God who has proven that some of the deepest, most painful, most inextricable rejections were actually God's protection. For it was here at Fisk that he not only got the benefit of being declared a sophomore because of his rigorous New England education, but it was here at Fisk for the very first time that Willie Du Bois belonged to a large, vibrant community of black people. Yes, in that 1886 letter, he did write back home enthusiastically to let them people know there was some colored folk up here on this hill. I can hardly realize they are my people, that this great assembly of youth and intelligence are representatives of a race which 20 years ago was in bondage. Described as the first of several turning points in his life, it was at Fisk that he was suddenly thrust into, quote, the world gorgeous color gamut of the American Negro world. Yes, Du Bois said that at his very first day on the campus, it was something like a religious experience. As memorialized in bronze statuette on the library's, I think, third floor, maybe second, I ain't been up there in a while. He wandered exhilarated across the campus, sampling the colors bronze, mahogany, coffee, gold. Du Bois was fascinated by the beauty of black skin and astonished by the inability of white folk to perceive that beauty. Within a month of his arrival, Du Bois found support and campus notoriety. After falling ill with typhoid fever that October, he regularly attended chapel in Old Livingstone, only to discover that he had questions about his faith. And from other students, he received answers to questions that he didn't even know that he had about slavery. It was because of Fisk that he spent those summers in rural one-room schools, where he taught the rudimentary basics of a formal education and learned as much of the humility as he ever would. He learned also some small measure of patience. It was because of Fisk that he joined the staff of the Fisk Herald, making friends with that would-be Mrs. Booker T. Washington one day. And it was at Fisk where first, by virtue of his student Josie's mother, he discovered, he explored, and he mastered to great degree his attraction to the opposite sex, if you know what I mean, okay? By the time Willie Du Bois graduated in June of 1888, he was well on his way to becoming W.E.B. His years at Fisk had earned him admission to Harvard College, which did not accept his course credits, much less recognize his degree from Fisk. As historian Lewis Henry Gates Skip, director of the W.E.B. Du Bois Institute for African and African American Research at Harvard, pointedly notes, while Harvard was his fantasy place to study, Du Bois could not even live in the dorms. Du Bois must have recognized quickly that which we should now universally know to be true. Neither racism nor segregation were Southern inventions, much less the exclusive purview of white Southerners. He who, quote, went to Harvard as a Negro not simply by birth, but recognizing himself as a member of a segregated caste, remarked of his matriculation at Harvard, I did not find better teachers at Harvard, but teachers better known. And of his Harvard PhD graduation in 895, said this: the honor, I assure you, was Harvard's. Y'all clap for that. I'm rounding the bend. By the time of his death in Ghana on August 27th, 1963, yes, on the eve of the March on Washington, Dr. Du Bois, to borrow from David Levering Lewis, was, quote, an Olympus of scholarship and opinion who cut an amazing swath through 4 continents, writing 16 pioneering or provocative books on sociology, history, politics, and race relations. Y'all could clap for that. But not without love. His 2 mothers, love, Mary and Fisk. You see, Harvard took no gamble on him, just like Vanderbilt took no chance on me. The same has been true and will be true for so many more of us who will overcome everything that life throws at us. Not because we are destined, but rather because we are determined. A determination that comes from the confidence of knowing who and whose we are. A confidence that comes from knowing that we were and that we are loved into being. Maybe Du Bois would still have been great without his 2 mothers' loves. But I wouldn't bet on it. You see, that song of my Bahamian girlhood, you remember the take on Seeger's classic? It has a stanza that goes this way. He took 100 pounds of clay, and then he said, hey, listen, I've got to fix this world today because I know what I've been missing. And he rolled his thick sleeves up, and then the world began. He created a woman and lots of loving for a man. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. DeGregory. Almost a year ago, Dr. Kwame called me and he said, I need someone to do a forward for the book that we're working on. And there was one person that I thought of and he thought of, and he said, perfect. And he called Crystal, and she agreed. And so today, I just want to thank you for being here and honoring Dr. Du Bois with us. And on behalf of Fisk University, Provost Carr, and our entire committee, I'd like to present you a collector's edition of Heritage and Honor, and this is number 7 of 100.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Patterson. I'm a senior history major here at Fisk University, and I'm here to give the student response. And Dr. DeGregory, I must say you got something on the inside of this preacher pretty happy. But I told Jasmine to just let me know my time, so I'm not up here just talking and talking and talking. But 3 words came to mind when listening to her speak, and that was pay it forward. We hear all the time that you're supposed to go to college, keep good grades, be active in your community so that you can get a good job, support yourself and your family. And while yes, that is part of it, that's not the only reason why you get your education and be active in your community. You get your education and are active in your community so that you can help others through. And one of my favorite things about Du Bois is the idea of the talented 10th. That those of us who have the possibility to go get an education, we get an education, and then we go back into the communities that we live, where we play and grow and pay it forward and help others become educated. And then another thing that I get through study of Du Bois is just the power of my voice. Du Bois always used his voice and always knew the effectiveness of his voice. Whether it be as one of the founders of the Niagara movement, which later became the NAACP, or if it became hearing through that black men who were serving in the armed forces could serve, but at the same time couldn't lead their regiments. Let me use my voice to make sure that things change. And then also, here at Fisk University, the reason why we have student life, when his daughter Yolanda was going to Fisk University, he took on the dictatorial president, Lafayette McKenzie, and was like, you're not doing the students right. You're not allowing them to have places where they can express themselves, no fraternal or sorority organizations, no student clubs that they can take part in. And because of his words, things at Fisk University changed. And then just the possibility, I love Fisk because this education and being in these spaces helps me see and others see that our dreams are attainable. When you can walk on this campus and see a Du Bois statue and know that he walked these same grounds, when you can go on Rep. John Lewis Way and realize that John Lewis walked these same grounds, when I can go in Memphis, Tennessee and see Ida B. Wells Street in Memphis and know that she walked these same grounds and documented a lot of the lynchings that took place in the area, so that I know the history of what happened to my people when they tried to do simple things as voting or speaking out. We know the possibilities of where education can take us. And we need to take it seriously so that we can advocate and pay it forward. I believe that is what Fisk University is, and I believe that is who Du Bois is. Another thing that got to me when I was sitting there was the song, and letting my life not be in vain. I can't just be concerned, and we can't just be concerned with what something can do for us. But we always have to go into a situation and leave a situation figuring out what we can do for other people. And that's what I want to leave with everybody. What can you do to help propel other people forward? And what can you do to make sure that other people have opportunities that they didn't have? Thank you so much, Dr. DeGregory. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rogers, Provost Carr, Dean Curry, and everybody who participated in this Du Bois convocation. It is an honor to be in front of you and have the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jasmine Mitchell. I am a history major, class of 2023, graduating May 1st. Thank you. I am here to also give a response to today's lecture, or just talk, I guess. You know, it wasn't a lecture, it wasn't anything like that. But something that I really took from something she said was not only the love from Du Bois's mother that really propelled him to be who he became in history, but also what I relate to most was my first day here at Fisk, being with other students who I wasn't used to being around in my high school and earlier education, so I feel like I could really relate to coming here and being welcome and just seeing people who look like me be great and successful and smart and beautiful, and just really being able to live in that for 4 years before we go out into the real world with our careers is something I really needed, and I think everyone else could learn from and hopefully also take from. And yes, thank you.
Good morning. Everyone looks smashing. It has been such a wholesome, humbling thing to be present here. My name is Gift Eni. I am an international honors student, currently double majoring in computer science and English language from Abia State, Nigeria. I am here to deliver our collective gratitude to the members of the class 1974 who championed Du Bois Day at Fisk University. When we asked our 3 alums why they wanted to see annual Du Bois celebration at Fisk University, they each responded with positivity and selflessness. I have always maintained the position that Dr. Du Bois was the greatest alumnus to have ever attended Fisk University. I hope students will go to Ghana and study the final days of his life in Ghana. In addition, students will benefit from their experience at W.E.B. Du Bois Museum in Accra. That was Mr. Robert Dillingham. And then Dr. Du Bois was one of his era's foremost Black critical thinkers. He encouraged Black people to embrace our African heritage as we worked and lived in racist United States. His Fisk education prepared him to lead the struggle in attaining justice and equality worldwide. This was Miss Mary Ann Franklin. And finally, the idea of W.E.B. Du Bois Day was that of my classmate, Robert Dillingham. I was delighted to be a part of the group that worked on establishing a day to honor such a distinguishing alumnus of Fisk University. This was attorney Denise Sanders. Today, we honor these 3 Fisk University alumni from the class 1974, Dr. Robert Dillingham, Mrs. Mary Ann Franklin, and Dr. Denise Sanders, for their vision and advocacy that helped make Du Bois Day at Fisk University an official recognized celebration each year, February 23rd. Without their support and determination, this year's and last year's celebration would not be possible. We echo these sentiments and more, lift up the life and legacy of our fellow alum, Dr. Du Bois. They remind us to hold on to history and the history and the figures that make this institution so great. They remind us to pay respect to whom respect is due, and if for nothing but this event alone, we pay their due respect. As Fiskites, we are grateful and honored to bear the same name. Dr. Dillingham, Miss Franklin, and Miss Sanders, you are truly sons and daughters ever on the altar. Please Please join me by standing and giving these three members of the class 1974 a hearty round of applause. Thank you.
Good morning, and happy birthday to you. It is Du Bois's birthday. We're honored and grateful to have celebrated his memory this morning. Thank you, Dr. DeGregory, for your inspiring and really triumphant words on his behalf. Thanks to President Sims and Provost Carr and the members of the committee, Dr. Adebanjo, faculty, Ms. Schuyler, Dr. Dillingham, one of the class members of 1974, Ms. Marianne Franklin, class of 1974, attorney Billy Bowers Sanders, class of 1974. This was truly their idea, and so we thank them for bringing this to us. Also, we give a lot of thanks to Delisa Minor Harris, who who led this committee, to Philip Sinatry, who gave talks this morning, Ms. Katara Grissom, and also to Nate Perry. So thank you all for your participation in this event. This was really wonderful. Just for a moment, speaking on a mother's love, and if I can help somebody, the whole point of the university is to pay it forward. Would all of the honor scholars who are in the room, the program is named for W.E.B. Du Bois. So would all of the honor scholars in the room please stand? We'd also like to acknowledge the Royal Court, if the Royal Court would stand. Members of SGA, the Student Government Association, if you're in the room, please stand. Faculty, staff, administrators, deans, would you all please stand? And finally, if there are any alumni in the room, would you all please stand? All right. Thank you so much. We are launching a trip to Ghana in honor of Du Bois. His trip was in 1963. This is 2003. So exactly 60 years later, some of the Fisk students, 26 of them, are taking a reverse pilgrimage from Fisk to Ghana to celebrate Du Bois's legacy there. So if any of the students from the Ghana trip are in the chapel, would you all please stand? Thank you all so very much. Dean Curry, thank you for allowing us to have this program in your lovely chapel this morning. The service is concluded. We look forward to seeing you all this evening for the Pearson Mitchell lecture. It is at 7, right, Dr. Adebanjo? 7 p.m. this afternoon, and there are a host of Du Bois programs happening this afternoon for the Writing Center and our art gallery. So we look forward to seeing you all day. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you. And we will have the alma mater before we dismiss.
My name is Jeffrey Allen Peck. I am Dr. Du Bois's great grandson.
My name is Arthur McFarlane, and I am the great grandson of Dr. William Edward Burkhart Du Bois. So our family has really committed itself to maintaining the legacy of my great-grandfather. He was recognized by many people as having a broad reach in terms of his scholarship, in terms of the work that he did in the NAACP and the many books that he'd written, the sociology department that he'd started at Atlanta University, and et cetera. And so there were a lot of pieces to his legacy. And each of us in the family really feel as though that his legacy is an important one to maintain. So we talk to everybody that we can reach out to about his background, his legacy, his history, his life. My brother does talks, I do talks, talking from anywhere from elementary schools to corporations, and just trying to make sure that they understand who he was and that his life lives on through not only us, but through the many scholars who study his work.
The goal of the family is to help preserve and promote Dr. Du Bois's legacy and aid in any way in his vision of world peace, a world without racism, talk about bringing nations together to sit down and discuss differences rather than to resort to war, which he was highly against. Most of all, seeing people of the world see one another as equals. And that was his vision, and that is the vision of the family. Very, very humbling to know that they think that highly of him. But at the same time, I'm extremely excited to know that many places that he actually traveled to or attended are admiring and giving him recognition at this point in this stage in history.
So Fisk University is holding this inaugural honoring of my great-grandfather, and they intend to do that on an annual basis, which I think is fascinating and fantastic. It really is a connection that Grandpa had that really changed his life. He went from living in a very small town, predominantly white, in the southwestern corner of Massachusetts. He was born in Great Barrington. And he really had that sort of insular upbringing that goes along with being raised in a small town and being raised in a rural community. And going to Fisk, he had the opportunity to then see what Black people were really like. He describes it in a couple of his autobiographies about the many hues and colors of his people. And that really changed the way he saw the world. It changed his life in many, many ways. And so I think the fact that Fisk is honoring him on an annual basis really would be something that he would be proud of, something that he would feel is really an honor for him, because it was such an honor for him to be there and to look at things from that different perspective and with those different eyes.
Future generations should view him, in my opinion, as a giant in civil rights. He is considered by many the first to fight for civil rights for African Americans. And as far as them furthering it, continue to strive to be everything that he told us we could be. He said we could be intellectuals. We could be presidents, we could be vice presidents, we could be on the Congress, we could be doctors, lawyers, we could be anything that we put our minds to. And I think that my great-grandfather instilled the fact that all the lies that were told about what we weren't able to achieve, he proved that we could. He gave us hope. And hope is what our future generations should continue to have and display.
So as we look forward and we look backward at the same time, Dr. Du Bois's work is, I think, some of the most important work that people today need to look at, both Black people and white people. I think his work brings forward many of the answers as well as clarifies many of the questions that we have about this issue that we call race relations, whether we want to call it diversity or inclusion or equity or whatever we want to, whatever language we want to wrap around it. Intersectionality is some language that we're starting to use more in this work as well. Whatever language you want to wrap around it, Grandpa was talking about that in some way, shape, or form 100 years ago. And so as we look back at his work and we look to carry that work forward, I hope that we can stand on that foundation and really utilize the things that he did and the things that he said and the things that he created as evidence that, number one, this is not something new. What's going on for Black people today is not new. We were being enslaved and killed hundreds of years ago. And even after the Emancipation Proclamation, it didn't really change that much. And things haven't changed in some ways since then. And so there is a lot to work on. And I think people need to look back at that history and see how and why we got to where we are.